Imagine running an institution where a single mistake in payroll, data security, or procurement could lead to financial loss, reputational damage, or even legal problems. This is exactly why risk management is critical in every organization. I'm Gideon, and in today's video we'll break down what risk is, the risk management process, and how institutions prioritize and control risks effectively. The learning objectives of our today's video will be 1. Understand the basics of risk and risk management. 2. Familiarize with the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, 31000 Risk Management Framework. 3. Learn risk identification and analysis techniques and explore risk treatment and monitoring methods. 4. Understand how we can promote a risk-aware culture in our organizations. To start us off, we ask ourselves, what is risk? Risk is defined as anything that may affect the achievement of an objective. It represents the possibility that an event will occur and negatively impact the achievement of strategic, operational, financial, or compliance goals. There are 2 measures of risk. 1. Inherent risk. This is the level of risk that exists naturally due to the nature of the activity or process without any controls in place. For example, the inherent risk of managing cash transactions includes theft or misappropriation. 2. Residual risk. This is the level of risk remaining after controls have been implemented. For example, even after installing CCTV cameras and safes, some risk of cash mismanagement may still exist. While inherent risks are always present, the goal of risk management is to reduce the risk to an acceptable level, known as residual risk. Next, we define the elements of risk. Number 1. Threat, or what could happen. A threat is any potential event, person, or incident that could cause harm, damage, or disruption to an organization's assets, operations, or objectives. Examples include cyber attacks, natural disasters, or supply chain failures. Number 2. Probability, or how likely it is. Probability, often called likelihood, measures the chance of a threat materializing. It answers the question, how likely is it that this risk will occur? This is usually analyzed based on historical data, trends, or expert judgment, often scaled as low, medium, or high. Number 3. Impact, or how bad it will be. Impact measures the severity of the consequences or fallout if the threat successfully exploits a vulnerability. It encompasses financial loss, reputational damage, legal consequences, and operational disruption. Understanding these elements helps in proper risk identification and risk analysis. What are the categories of risk attitude? Organizations have different attitudes toward risk. Some avoid risk at all costs, others take bold risks for innovation. Your attitude toward risk often depends on your goals, past experiences, and tolerance for failure. The following are the categories of risk attitude in different organizations. Number 1. Risk-averse organizations. These are organizations which totally try to avoid risks in their operations. Number 2. Risk-taking organizations. These are organizations which purposely pursue risk to achieve their objectives. Number 3. Risk-neutral organizations. These are organizations which pursue its objective oblivious of the risks. Decisions are primarily based on expected value or potential gains, rather than on the inherent risks associated with them. An organization's risk attitude should align with its goals and values. So, why do we take risks? Taking risks is necessary to pursue growth, innovation, and goals. Without risk-taking, there is no innovation. Opportunities are missed. Growth stagnates. Without taking risks, we limit ourselves to the status quo and miss out on the potential rewards of going after what we truly want. For example, a college might invest in a new online learning platform. While there's a risk it may not succeed, the reward of expanded reach justifies the risk. Now, let's look at some of the risk prevalent to organizations, taking a technical training institute as an example. Number 1. Strategic risks. Strategic risks are risks which relate to the overall success of the college's strategic goals and can include external factors like economic downturns and shifts in student demographics. Number 2. Legal and compliance risk. Risks such as non-compliance with laws and regulations related to student rights, employment, and environmental standards can result in legal action, fines, and reputational damage. Number 3. Financial and budgetary constraints risk. Risks such as declining enrollment, increased operating costs, and unpredictable funding sources can lead to financial instability. Number 4. Cybersecurity and data privacy risk. Risks such as data breaches, unauthorized access to student and staff information, malware infections, and phishing attacks can compromise the college's data and reputation. Number 5. Reputation and public relations risk. Risks arising from negative media coverage, scandals, and community backlash can damage the college's image and enrollment. And last but not the least, number 6. Academic and research integrity risk. Risks arising from academic dishonesty, research misconduct, and plagiarism can undermine the college's academic reputation and credibility. In order to ensure that the college keeps running smoothly and safely, each of these risks must be addressed through proactive risk management. Let's look at the risk maturity model. This model shows how advanced an organization is in managing risk, from unaware to risk intelligent. At the first level, which is the risk naive level, the entity has minimal or no awareness of risk management. The governing body and management is not committed in establishing risk management framework. Processes are performed on an ad hoc basis by individuals, and the entity promote risk management and rely on audits risk management. At the second level, risk-aware level, the unstructured risk management and limited standardization, risk management initiatives are supported by top management on a need basis, as needed risk and control self-assessment process are implemented, and the entity promote entity-wide approach to risk management and rely on audits risk assessment. The third level, risk-defined level, risk management framework is developed and implemented. Top management take lead in ensuring risk processes are developed and implemented in all key areas. Formal risk processes are implemented and documented, and the entity liaise with risk management function and use management's assessment of risk where appropriate. The fourth level, risk-managed level, risk is integrated into strategic planning. Risk criteria is stated and communicated. The entity is proactive in risk management. Top management ensures risk management is structured and consistently implemented across the institute. Risk management processes are monitored, gaps addressed and continually improved, and the entity audit risk management processes and uses management's assessment of risk as appropriate. At the fifth level, risk-enabled level, risk management is a value-adding tool and is integrated into all decision-making. The governing body undertakes its risk oversight role. Risk management is embedded at all levels of the institute. Risk analytics are used to identify and monitor risk. Advanced risk management processes are in use, and the entity audit risk management processes and uses management's assessment of risk. A mature risk culture means risks are proactively managed across all levels. So, what is risk management? Risk management is the process of identifying, assessing, and addressing any financial, legal, strategic, and security risks to an organization. Key areas of risk include financial, operational, legal, strategic. Public institutions especially need strong risk systems due to complex environments. Changes in technology, policies, staff turnover, even pandemics, all increase uncertainty. For instance, a college managing exam leakages by strengthening paper security is engaging in risk management. The rationale for implementing risk management, especially in public institutions, is that public institutions operate in complex environments affected by changing policies, emerging technologies, budget constraints, unpredictable events like pandemics. Implementing risk management helps organizations set realistic strategies, operate effectively amid uncertainty, and deliver value to stakeholders. Good risk management leads to 1. Better governance and accountability. 2. Improved performance and resource use. 3. Early fraud detection. 4. More informed decision-making. 5. Stakeholder confidence, just to mention but a few. Example: a college implementing risk management may detect potential fraud early through improved financial oversight. The risk management process follows the ISO 31000 framework. It begins with risk assessment, which involves identifying risks, analyzing their likelihood and impact, evaluating against risk appetite, then deciding on treatment. Finally, reporting, monitoring, and communication ensure risks are managed continuously. Now let's look at each step of the risk management in details. Number 1. Risk assessment. This is a process of identifying potential hazards and analyzing the likelihood and impact of those hazards. We perform risk assessment to identify areas having higher risks. Risk assessment involves risk identification, risk analysis, and risk evaluation. Risk identification is the process of determining and documenting potential risks to your business. This can include anything from a natural disaster that could damage your property to a disgruntled employee who could sabotage your systems. To identify a risk, we should ask ourselves the following questions. What are we trying to do or achieve? This leads to objective setting. B. What might affect us? This leads to risk identification. When identifying risks, it is important to have a clear distinction between risks and causes. A risk is the event that might happen and cause trouble, while a cause is the reason why that risk might happen. Example. Cause, staff not trained on use of ERP system. The risk will be data entry errors in payroll. The impact will be staff paid wrong salaries leading to audit issues. What are the risk identification tools? Risk identification tools are methodologies, techniques, and systems used to discover and document potential hazards and challenges that could affect a project, business, or organization's objectives. Risk identification tools include 1. SWOT analysis. This tool analyzes the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats related to a project or organization, helping to identify both internal and external risks. 2. Root cause analysis. This is a structured problem-solving technique which involves identifying the fundamental and underlying causes of a risk, not just the superficial causes of risks, to better understand how to mitigate them, prevent recurrence, and enable long-term, effective solutions. 3. Brainstorming. This technique involves gathering a group of people to generate a list of potential risks by thinking freely and openly. 4. Conducting interviews. Conducting interviews with stakeholders, experts, and relevant individuals can provide valuable insights into potential risks and their potential impact. 5. Documentation review. Examining documents, past data, and other relevant information can reveal potential risks. 6. Risk checklist. A risk checklist is used to identify gaps in the controls measures, which could be a sign of control weakness, hence a potential risk. Last but not the least. 7. Risk register. A risk register is a centralized repository for all identified risks, their assessments, and mitigation strategies. These tools help teams proactively identify risks, enabling them to develop strategies to mitigate their impact and improve decision-making and overall success. After identifying risks, we analyze their impact and likelihood. In risk analysis, we need to define the impact and the likelihood or probability. Likelihood is defined based on past occurrences. We also define the impact, which is the potential negative effect or consequence a risk event has on a project, business, or organization's objectives and assets. It describes the severity of the harm, considering factors such as financial losses, operational disruptions, reputational damage, and impacts on health, safety, and security. After defining the likelihood and the impact, we plot the result in the organization risk heat map. Risk equals probability multiplied by impact. This provides a holistic view of potential threats, helping to identify and allocate resources to the most critical risks. The third step under risk assessment is risk evaluation. Risk evaluation means comparing the company risk levels against its risk appetite. That is, how much risk is the company willing to tolerate? If a risk exceeds tolerance, it must be managed or reduced. Example, a minor data entry error might be acceptable, while a payroll breach will definitely not be acceptable. In risk evaluation, we should ask ourselves the following question. Which of those things that might affect us are the most significant? This leads to prioritization. After identifying and analyzing risks, The next step is risk rating or prioritization. This helps us determine which risks need urgent attention and which ones simply require monitoring. Risk is usually calculated using the formula. Risk equals likelihood multiplied by impact. Based on the score, risks are grouped into 5 categories. 1. Low risks, with scores between 1 and 4, fall in the green zone. These are minor issues with little impact and mainly require monitoring. 2. Minor risks, scoring 5 to 9, fall in the yellow zone. These may cause some inconvenience and require attention to prevent escalation. 3. Moderate risks, with scores between 10 and 14, fall in the orange zone. These require appropriate action to manage and reduce the risk. 4. Major risks, scoring 15 to 19, fall in the brown zone. These require serious attention and the introduction of strong control measures. Finally, 5. Severe risks, with scores between 20 and 25, fall in the red zone. These are critical risks that require urgent action to reduce the potential impact on the organization. In summary, risk rating helps organizations focus their efforts on the most significant risks first, ensuring resources are directed where they are needed most. Now that we understand how risks are rated and prioritized, the next important question becomes: which level of risk is acceptable to the organization, and which one requires action? To answer this, organizations rely on 3 important concepts: risk criteria, risk appetite, and risk tolerance. First, risk criteria refer to the set of standards or reference points used to evaluate the significance of a risk. These criteria are usually derived from laws, policies, regulations, organizational standards, and other requirements that guide decision-making. Next, we have risk tolerance, which represents the acceptable level of variation in performance while pursuing organizational objectives. In simple terms, it defines the boundaries within which the organization can operate before corrective action becomes necessary. Finally, risk appetite refers to the overall amount of risk an organization is willing to accept in pursuit of value and achievement of its strategic goals. Together, these concepts help organizations strike the right balance between caution and opportunity. They ensure that risks are not only identified and evaluated, but also managed in a way that supports responsible decision-making and the successful achievement of organizational objectives. Once risks have been identified, analyzed, and evaluated, the next step in the risk management process is risk treatment. Risk treatment involves selecting and implementing appropriate actions to manage risks so that they remain within an acceptable level. The objective is to ensure that risks do not prevent the organization from achieving its goals. There are 4 common ways organizations respond to risk, often summarized using the ATAC approach. The first option is accepting the risk. This means the organization decides to take no additional action because the risk level is already within the acceptable limits defined by its risk criteria. In such cases, the organization simply monitors the risk. The second option is transferring the risk. Here, the organization shifts part of the risk to another party. Common examples include buying insurance, outsourcing certain services, or engaging specialized service providers. The third option is avoiding the risk. This occurs when an organization decides not to engage in a particular activity because the associated risks are too high. In other words, the best way to manage the risk is simply to eliminate the activity that creates it. Finally, organizations can control or mitigate the risk. This involves implementing measures that reduce either the likelihood of the risk occurring or the impact if it does occur. Most day-to-day management decisions fall into this category. In practice, organizations often combine several of these strategies to ensure that risks are managed effectively and remain within acceptable limits. Ultimately, effective risk treatment helps organizations protect their resources, maintain operational stability, and improve the chances of achieving their strategic objectives. After identifying risks and deciding how to treat them, organizations implement control or mitigation measures to reduce those risks. One of the most important tools used for this purpose is internal controls. Internal controls are processes designed to provide reasonable assurance to management that organizational objectives will be achieved. These controls support organizations in several key areas. First, they help ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of operations. This means that activities are carried out properly and resources are used wisely. Second, internal controls improve the reliability of management communication and financial reporting. Accurate information allows management to make informed decisions and maintain transparency. Third, internal controls help organizations maintain compliance with applicable laws and regulations, which is particularly important in public institutions and regulated sectors. Fourth, they assist in the safeguarding of assets, ensuring that resources such as cash, equipment, and information systems are protected from loss, misuse, or theft. Finally, internal controls ensure adherence to established institutional and government policies, promoting accountability and proper governance. In simple terms, internal controls consist of policies, procedures, practices, and organizational structures that are implemented to reduce risks. For example, an organization may implement a policy requiring staff to change their system passwords every 3 months. This control helps reduce the risk of unauthorized access to sensitive information. Overall, strong internal controls are essential because they help organizations manage risks effectively, protect resources, and support the achievement of organizational objectives. Now that we understand what internal controls are and how they help reduce risk, let's briefly look at how these controls are classified. Internal controls are generally grouped into 3 main categories: preventive, detective, and corrective controls. First, we have preventive controls. These are controls designed to stop problems before they occur. Their main purpose is to prevent errors, inefficiencies, or irregularities from happening in the first place. Examples include the use of antivirus software, data encryption systems, and access controls. Second, we have detective controls. These controls are designed to identify problems after they have occurred. They help management detect errors or irregularities early so that corrective action can be taken. Examples include system monitoring tools, firewalls, and job rotation practices. Third, we have corrective controls. These controls focus on restoring normal operations after a problem has occurred. They help the organization recover and minimize damage. A good example is data backup systems, which allow organizations to restore information if data is lost or compromised. It is important to note that preventive controls are often more efficient because they reduce the likelihood of risks occurring. On the other hand, detective and corrective controls focus on managing the impact if risks do occur. Together, these controls form an important part of an organization's overall risk management and internal control system. Upon establishing internal controls, it is important to determine whether these controls are actually working as intended. This is done through a process known as control testing. Control testing focuses on 3 key areas. The first is the test of design. Here, we assess whether the control has been properly designed to address the identified risk. In other words, we ask, if this control operates as planned, will it effectively prevent or detect the risk? The second is the test of implementation. This step checks whether the control has actually been put in place and is being used in practice by the responsible staff. Finally, we have the test of effectiveness. This involves evaluating whether the control is consistently operating and successfully achieving its intended purpose over time. Together, these tests help management and auditors confirm that internal controls are not only well designed, but also properly implemented and functioning effectively. To further evaluate the design of internal controls and whether controls are designed, implemented, and operating effectively, auditors often use assertions. Assertions are management's implicit or explicit claims that financial and operational information is accurate, complete, and reliable. By testing these assertions, auditors can determine whether the controls in place are capable of preventing or detecting errors. For example, 1. The existence assertion helps confirm that recorded assets or transactions actually exist. 2. The completeness assertion ensures that all transactions that should be recorded have been captured. 3. The accuracy assertion checks whether transactions are recorded at the correct amounts. 4. The rights and obligations assertion confirms that the organization actually owns the assets recorded. And 5. The presentation and disclosure assertion ensures that information is properly classified and clearly reported. By examining controls against these assertions, auditors are able to determine whether the design of the internal control system is adequate to ensure reliable information and effective risk management. Once risks have been identified, assessed, and appropriate controls implemented, the next step is risk monitoring and reporting. Risk monitoring ensures that risks are continuously tracked and reviewed to determine whether the existing controls are still effective. Organizations use several tools to support this process. These include 1. Key performance indicators, which help measure whether operations are performing as expected. 2. Dashboards, which provide a visual summary of risk levels and performance trends. 3. Risk register, which serves as a central document that records identified risks, their causes, impact, risk owners, and the control measures put in place. Regular monitoring and reporting help management detect emerging risks early, make informed decisions, and ensure that risk management remains an ongoing and proactive process rather than a one-time activity. Internal audit plays an important role in supporting effective risk monitoring within an organization. While management is responsible for managing risks, internal auditors provide independent assurance on whether risk management processes and internal controls are working effectively. Internal auditors typically review areas such as risk management practices, internal control systems, and compliance with policies and regulations. Through audits, reviews, and recommendations, internal auditors help management identify weaknesses, strengthen controls, and improve overall governance. In this way, internal audit acts as a key partner in promoting accountability and continuous improvement in risk management. An effective risk management system also requires a strong risk culture within the organization. Risk culture refers to how people think about, communicate about, and respond to risks in their daily activities. To embed a strong risk culture, organizations must establish clear governance structures, provide training and awareness programs, and encourage open communication about risks. Leadership also plays a critical role by setting the tone at the top and demonstrating commitment to responsible risk management. When risk awareness becomes part of everyday decision-making, organizations are better able to anticipate challenges, respond quickly to uncertainties, and achieve their objectives more effectively. As we conclude, it is important to remember that risk management is not a one-time activity but a continuous process. Organizations must identify risks, assess their potential impact, implement appropriate controls, and continuously monitor them to ensure objectives are achieved. Through tools such as risk registers, internal controls, and performance monitoring, organizations are able to manage uncertainty and make informed decisions. Ultimately, effective risk management helps organizations protect their resources, comply with regulations, and achieve their strategic goals. Thank you for watching.